This is the bonus section podcast episode number 99. What's up with your dreams? Are you the type of person that knows you were meant for something greater in this lifetime and that somewhere inside of you there's just this bigger version of yourself trying to break through? But despite all your self-development, you just can't seem to find the way up there. Well, then, hey, you are definitely in the right place. I'm Danny Griffin, the founder of the bonus section and the host of this podcast. And I'm a person just like you, trying to learn how to live the most fulfilling life possible. So to help you take immediate action to get moving in a better direction, we take all the notes from these episodes and we post them for a short period of time at freethinkingtools.com so that you just have something that you can print out or look at on your iPhone, iPad, laptop, wherever you are. Just do some thinking. It's important, right? Be academic for a little bit. It doesn't mean you have to pick up a book and really grind away before thinking. Just sit there and think. Well, what comes to mind? What are the things that are important to you? Do that. You get a little bit deeper into your unconscious and what's kind of rooting around in there. And that's what this is about today. What's up with your dreams? I listen to a lot of audiobooks and I try to read as many books too. And I am now drifting into all things psychology driven. And I think it's probably stimulated most recently. Well, it's always one of my favorite books is on the shelf behind me. If you're watching the video, there's a book called The New Psycho-Cybernetics, really originally Psycho-Cybernetics, written by a plastic surgeon in the 1950-60 era. And his name was Maxwell Maltz, and a really fascinating guy that talked a lot about self-image reconstruction. Interesting that a plastic surgeon would be so really infatuated almost with the fact that he could perform surgery on somebody, but yet they would look in the mirror and they wouldn't see the wonderful new nose they perceived they were getting. They would just see the same old person. And he talked a lot about the ability to reconstruct your self-image, which was really at play. So if you root around in all things psychology, you're going to find some big names. And one of those is Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist and psychologist. Yes, I think I'm saying those two things correctly. And as I started to look for some of his work, by the way, to give full credit where credit is due, right now, Jordan Peterson is proliferating all over the internet, and I find him to be an amazing thought leader. I don't know how. I say this all the time when I bring him up, probably to defend him. He seems to have been politicized, which is weird to me, because he's just an academic and he just really looks at it. Of course, everybody has opinion that mixes in with their academic regurgitation of information, but I find that he puts you on a path to learn, and I like that. So whether you agree with him or not, he does a great job, and he recommends a lot of books. And of course, Jung is what affected him as a clinical psychologist himself, or one of those big influences. So when I looked through Jung's, I went to Barnes & Noble first. Physically, I didn't see everything I wanted to for all his works. And then there was a book called Man and His Symbols. And what's striking about that work for me, striking, I don't know, a little bit strong word, but what's compelling about that body of work is that it's told that that was his final body of work, and he was approached to try to make what he said more approachable. And I've had this conversation with people that know me pretty well, and I can geek out sometimes, and I can go academic, and I'm also, though, a huge proponent of chunking things up. So I was very drawn to a book where Jung, this brain, this genius in this realm of psychology, would have tried to do the same. And so I started to listen to it. And man, it is. I'm in the thick of it as I'm saying this, but I had to share it. I'm excited. And that's what happens to me. I get into a body of work and I want to share it with you on this podcast as soon as I think about it. So Carl Jung, Man and His Symbols. I'm listening to the audiobook. So sometimes, and by the way, I do a lot of rewinding with Audible. It's interesting. I hear a good concept and I'll hit 30-30 backwards. So I get another minute. I hear it a couple times. That's what I like about Audible. Sometimes I need to be textually into the book and I want to wrestle with the book itself. I'm reading The Gulag Archipelago by Alexander Solzhenitsyn at the same time. So I'm really into all this psychology. And, when you start to get into psychology, you start to see the malevolent and the benevolent, the good and the bad. So there's some interesting stuff going on here that's agitating, and we should all pay attention to it. So I highly recommend Man and His Symbols. Read it if you want, listen to it if you want, but go check it out. And I think the the term that I heard a lot for the first time is the word psyche. So again, going back to Maxwell Maltz, I've always heard about the subconscious and the power to program the subconscious. And that's a lot of what's in Maxwell's book. But in this case, there's a reference often to the psyche. So right before this podcast, I had to take a quick Wikipedia look at what psyche means or definition of psyche. And the best that I can give you and chunk up is that it's made up of your total mind. So the psyche is this concept of the total mind to include the conscious mind and the unconscious mind. Now, there are other things that come up in this book, your senses, your feelings, etc. But really the total mind to include conscious and unconscious. And therein lies the next point. There's really a tension between these things, right? Because I guess consciously we are experiencing things and then we kind of file them away. So let's just imagine we're a clean slate when we're born from a conscious standpoint. I don't know when a baby actually becomes conscious of their surroundings. I haven't done that much study where I can answer that or give you some sort of a framework, but let's just pretend the tapes are empty. And then we become this accumulation of these experiences over time. And again, the conscious mind can only hang on to so much, and then it has to file it away. And a lot of it seems like we dismissed it. It just seems like it's gone. But there's an argument that the unconscious mind, or I heard the word subliminal a lot in this book too, it's just getting filed away. And how much of it are we actually retaining in the unconscious? How much? What kind of a onboard computer system? What kind of a Google system do we actually have in our psyche? How powerful is it really? Is Google still yet to come even close to catching up to what the potential of the brain is? Artificial intelligence, all these things are very compelling. You're trying with all of technology today to approximate the human mind and then surpass it supposedly in the way that it can make certain judgments. And I've got to tell you, some crazy things are available right now. I started to look at a lot of AI that's out there right now, and it's stunning that it can reproduce your image. It can reproduce your voice. It can automatically edit out the ums and the ahs and a lot of the goofy things humans do because we're affected by all the stuff we have. So there's all this tension going on as the conscious comes in, and it has to get there. But really, the tension is something deeper. Believe me, I'm going to get to the dreams here, so stay with me. What I thought was really interesting is that when you have these personal experiences and they get into the unconscious, there's more on the tapes than we think. It's almost as if we're coming pre-programmed with what Jung refers to as collective experiences. Napoleon Hill talked about this too in Law of Success when he went out and he looked at all of these great industrialists of the late 1800s, early 1900s, and he interviewed them, and he started to talk a little bit crazy according to people who are afraid of psychology, as he talked about these ideas floating around in the ether, passing easily in and out of our minds, our psyches. And now here's Jung talking about this at a deeper level, that it's really a collection of experiences. Now, I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole, but I'm going to tell you, suddenly it made sense to me what anthropology could teach, what mythology could teach, what theology could teach as collective experiences, that even though you think you didn't have them until you experienced them consciously and then file away, maybe not. Maybe they're already on board. And that's creating this tension. Let that sink in. That's crazy. What if in your mind, and this is everyone, oh, not me, that's not me, I'm too dumb. Don't do that to yourself, please. Don't be that insecure. Just consider what I'm saying. The potential of the human mind is the subject really here. And then all of this that's going on in it, it has to go somewhere, doesn't it? So there's all this collision going on, and we try to repress all these things that we start to think, and we just try to control it and put some willpower on it. And we don't like that thought, or we don't like the way that this feeling provokes this thought. And then we go to sleep. And this crazy thing happens from time to time. We dream. And the dreams are like crazy vivid sometimes. And they're not all nice. Some of them leave you really stressed out. You wake up super tired. Other times you wake up, you're elated. I mean, there's hope. So all this tension that's going on, probably more so at the unconscious mind, and it is really bubbling up, and it wants to be heard, or at least seen, I guess, right? So I started to think about my own dreams, and I got very conscious about my sleep lately. And it was a little bit before this, because again, like I said, I was provoked by Peterson, who was talking a little bit more about concepts like this. I wasn't quite focused on the word dreams. I had actually seen it multiple times lately. I wanted to go a little bit deeper into psychology, and I certainly have Freud on my list in his book, Dreams. So, because there are some differences between Jung and Shakespeare. I'm Shakespeare. I'll be okay. There's my collective. Now I'm into Shakespeare, another genius, right? So all of this collective, I meant to say Freud and Jung got on Freud's radar. Like these are the people we're talking about. These are the people that said, you need to consider this stuff. And they had some differences in the way they looked at interpretation of dreams and who should be interpreting them. I was like, well, why don't we just each individually just consider it? Now, I have this concept. If you're watching me on YouTube, you'll see my really cool Batman journal that was gifted to me. And it's so special to me. There's this persona, this heroic persona that I always put around myself, that I am the Batman, is what I like to say, right? I put this protective persona around myself, which is pretty interesting. And I had this journal, and I don't think I've even cracked it yet. Let's take a look at it live on this podcast. My name's in there. That's always good. And there is one entry there, and it's about goals. But I decided to turn this into what I call the firefly jar. So when I'm coaching, I say to my clients, look, one of the most important things is when there's this in your brain and it lights something up, that tension that I'm talking about today lights up something. Go and capture that firefly. And how you do that is you become very conscious of the thought you're having. You pull it through your arm, through a pen, and onto paper. Now, if that's a journal or you just capture it, I like these yellow legal pads. That's my firefly jar. That's where I catch these things and I put them. But I really am excited to take this home and give it a special title, my dream journal, my firefly jar for my dreams, because I'm fascinated by them. And as I start to really think about some of them, there are some I can really still remember. I remember when my grandmother was elderly, and I knew the end was near, and I had a beautiful dream about her passing. The moon and the sun were up at the same time. And if you think about historical Hyannisport, if you listen to this, you have no idea. It's where the Kennedy family had their compound, quote unquote, and it's an elegant place on a hill. And when the sun drops on one side and the moon's out in the other, which happens, it's spectacular. And there was a beautiful hill, and there was a porch, and we were sitting there together on the porch in these rocking chairs. And I told her I had to go inside, and I'm getting the chills telling you about this dream. And I went in there. I said, I have to go inside and get a drink. And I came back out, and she was gone. And to this day, the symbolic, or the motif, the significance of the moon out during the day, I always say, there's Nana, is powerful. And it's just, I don't know what it was, that it was an echo into the afterlife or heaven or whatever you want to say. And recently, by the way, my father-in-law passed, and he was a big Neil Diamond fan. And right after he passed, I had a dream that wasn't so vivid, but I am telling you, I am not a Neil Diamond fan. So from time to time, there are a few songs I could probably name, but I could hear the music, not the words. I could hear the music of Neil Diamond, and I could see into heaven, or at least I could feel my way that it was right there because that was certainly his version of it. I knew that intimately. Fascinating, right? To sit there and consider that these things happen. And I could go on about some ugly stuff. I have been very clear that there are malevolent forces that it's not good. You give it any context you want. I'll give it my Christian context. I believe it's devilish. There was one night I had a dream and I couldn't see anything other than I could hear an eerie voice and a heavy, like physical weight on my chest. And I said some things to fight back and it went away. Like, these are crazy. Another one recently, somebody was in trouble and I went to help them. I won't get into the details of this one because it's a little bit personal about my locality here. And I went in to help them and I felt strong and I was able to pick them up and pull them, but I felt the heat, like a real heat. So I could go on and on and on about the things I'm going to put in this journal to try to figure out what this all means. But I'm well aware now that maybe there is something to tap into that's much more interesting to me. You talk about making your life more interesting. Imagine being able to tap into the collective. What's going on in there? And it's a little scary sometimes when you say some of that stuff can feel scary like that. But to me, I found it empowering because I spend obviously a lot of time doing this, and this is my passion podcast. So I just think that the bonus section today here is that I would implore you to start paying attention to your dreams. And I would implore you to write them down and maybe consider what they're trying to teach you about. They're teaching you something. They're making you aware of something. There's just this massive power inside of your psyche, your mind as a total. This battle between conscious and unconscious and repressed thoughts. Eventually, they're going to bubble themselves up, and sometimes they're not even repressed. They just come to you. A lot of people find their genius in their openness to receive those messages. That's what they do. So some pretty cool stuff going on with a very simple concept of dreams. But stop dismissing them. Even when they're scary or they're ugly or they're weighty, write those down. They're warning you, maybe. And I'll tell you, Carl Jung makes that case. My goodness, are the first 3 hours of that audiobook compelling. And by the way, that sounds like a lot when you listen. Oh, 3 hours. Really? I mean, it's not. And you can listen to it on Audible at 1.1, 1.2, 1.3 times. That's a little bit fast unless you're used to listening to audiobooks like that. You get the point, and you can hit that 30-second back button. But he makes some crazy statements about dreams that I'm thinking of too. A couple of his clients had that were warnings or harbingers of things to come, and they're amazing. It's just a fascinating, real look into the way that the mind works, okay? So, love this subject. I hope I didn't lose a lot of you. I know I lost some of you because it scares you. I get it. You start talking about psychological things and it just, we want things simpler and we want to control things. But I'd make a case that unless you're feeling really happy, you're probably repressing some of these thoughts and these dreams and what they mean. And there's nothing wrong with having that kind of a conversation with yourself. And that's the cool thing with yourself. It's just you and your dreams. Nobody interpreting them but you, trying to figure it out and see what it means, and then becoming more conscious of how that relates to your life. So let me go back and summarize this. What's up with your dreams? Really, what's up with your dreams? So the first point here was, well, Carl Jung, he's the one that really started to get me to pay attention to ask that question of myself with his book, Man and His Symbols. I highly recommend it. I'm early in the audiobook, but I highly recommend it. Because the first part is very, very clearly written by him. The rest, his colleagues helped him coordinate towards the end of his life. 2, your psyche is made up of your total mind, including your conscious, which we know about, but the unconscious is where there's a treasure trove of information. But 3, that leads to this tension between your personal experiences and your collective experiences, because there's a big argument that you're already programmed with a lot of experiences. And that's where you start to see the relationship to anthropology, mythology, theology, things of the past, this collective experience of the past. Peterson talks about that a lot too. In the bonus section I would simply suggest start paying attention to your dreams for yourself. Write them down. Consider what they're trying to teach you. Okay. That's pretty simple exercise and a cool one, I think. I think you'll learn a lot. All right, I'll state it this way. I recently started listening to Carl Jung's book, Man and His Symbols, and I'm struck by his discussion about his experience analyzing the dreams of his patients. Really compelling. It's very easy to live your life only in a conscious way. It's what a lot of us do. We're just only interested in what we see in front of us and never consider, or worse, dismiss what's going on in our unconscious mind. However, it's an extremely compelling idea that you have in your mind the accumulated collective experiences, maybe of all of life, that far surpass the limited experiences you have by yourself. It seems to me that we should all consider our dreams more closely as this great bank of knowledge that's actually trying to talk to us, teach us something, warn us, motivate us. It's trying to have a conversation, right? So listen. All right, remember, you can take immediate action to get moving towards your goals, because we take all the notes from each episode and we post them at freethinkingtools.com, and we give you instant access. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen. We also post our content on YouTube, so don't forget to subscribe to the bonus section channel. I am going to sunset that channel and point it over to my personal brand, because this is my personal brand that I am passionate about. So you'll see some directions over there. I'll put something over there as a video as soon as that happens. But of course, we'd also appreciate it if you join our mission of becoming a person for others and share this content. He said content. So everybody gets some help, okay? But remember this. Nobody's coming for you. Absolutely nobody. So go get to work on yourself and a better plan for your goals. And we'll see you in the next episode to try to motivate you to do just that. Thanks.